Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this wellness coaching session for parents of first-year students with Susan Howard, P17. My name is Nicole Ouellette, Associate Director of Development and Volunteer Manager of the Parent Leadership Council, also known as the PLC. We welcome you to this evening's event and thank you for attending and hope that you and your family are safe and healthy during this time. This talk is being recorded and will be distributed along with presentation materials after the event. Please feel free to type your questions in the Q&A box, not in the chat, and we will try to get through as many questions as we can after Susan's presentation. Now to briefly introduce our speaker. Susan Howard is an integrative wellness professional with a master's in kinesiology integrative wellness from Point Loma Nazarene University. She is also certified by the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching. Susan assists clients in adopting the dimensions of wellness into lifestyle practices to create a joyful, passionate, and purposeful life. She is also the parent of 2 young adult children working in the STEM field, including a mother from the class of 2017. I would now like to welcome Susan and turn it over to her.
Thank you so much, Nicole. It's such a pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you for everyone for tuning in. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen in a brief moment, but just wanted to say thank you for being open-minded to this process. Wellness coaching is an interesting experimental space, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started. Okay, so wellness coaching. This is for you as first year and transfer students, and we're discovering the collaborative process for positive change. So the strategies that we're going to do is actually create positive outcomes that are based on scientific evidence-based approaches to wellness. So I'm going to have this to be very interactive. So I hope you're ready to type in the chat. There's a little chat box if you're not familiar with it. I'm sure most of you are with all the Zoom calls that are going on these days. So first off, I want you to go ahead and put in your chat, what is wellness coaching? What do you actually think wellness coaching is? Oh, hold on one second. Let's see if we got any chat information here. So far, no participants as of yet in the chat box. So we're just going to go ahead and go with a structural guidance to well-being. Thank you so much for that chat. Any other curious minds that have a definition besides the one that I have out here? It's all about well-being. Thank you, Caroline. Anyone else want to give a stab at it? Even though I've got the answer on the screen, I want you to just what your initial thoughts for wellness coaching is. All right, mindfulness. Thank you. All right, so here we have the definition. As mentioned, we are going to have all of this information available to you, but I want this to be very interactive. So please feel free to share your thoughts as you go along. Thank you. Mind and body sync. I love that. So wellness coaching is a scientific evidence-based approach. Uses cognitive behavior therapy, positive psychology, and motivational interviewing techniques in a non-judgmental, collaborative, supportive partnership, exploring the dimensions of wellness. Now there's a few key words here. Non-judgmental, because we're really thinking of this as being scientifically experiential. So there's no such thing as perfectionism here. We're just learning and growing, and it's really a growth mindset. All right, the next question for you is, what is your vision? What are you really wanting to get out of this process tonight? And what are you envisioning that you'd like to take away from that you can apply to in your everyday lives with your students, or with your children, I should say, that are HMC students? Go ahead and type in here, and then I'm going to give you the answer of what we're going to be working on. All right, while you're typing, I'm going to go ahead and put in the information. So this is our vision. At the end of the session, we want you as parents to understand the scientific methods and have your own wellness coaching strategies, tools, and actions to make positive change and to support your HMC students. By learning and understanding the ORS method, which we're going to get into in a little bit, we will create simple steps to make positive change. You as parents will have the ability to learn practical ways to be positive in each day and to support the dimensions of wellness. So we have someone sharing, help my first year thrive in challenging situations. Great. Tools to understand mental and physical well-being in the COVID environment. Yeah, it's really important to start to ask inquisitive questions to yourself of what your vision really is, because that way, once you know the question, just like a hypothesis, then you can actually go ahead and put in the information that you want to solve it. So this is really important for you from your own growth perspective. So what are your goals? All right, I'm going to go ahead and tell you what our goals are today, but I want you to type in the chat. That way we can kind of keep things rolling. So our goals tonight are to embrace the process of wellness coaching and learn and implement the ORS method, and then explore and discover the scientific benefits of mindfulness and breath work, and then hopefully customize an action plan to increase support for you as a parent and for your children in the dimensions of wellness. Okay. So here we are. This is the feedback that we received from you as first year and transfer parents. In general, everything was pretty even. The emotional wellness was the first concern. Connections were straight thereafter, very close after. Resources, actually learning and understanding what's going on. Academic success was shortly thereafter, as well as physical and intellectual. So here, what we're going to do is we're actually going to define the different dimensions of wellness. It's really important to get a standard structure so that we can really move from there. So this support model comes from the 6 dimensions of wellness. We are actually tapping into 4 of them, which are emotional, physical, social, and intellectual. And then there's also spiritual and occupational. So for the 4 that we're going to be focusing on, the emotional is acceptance of feelings, management of emotions and stress, ability to center, stress resilience, attune to others' emotions. The physical is really going to look at regular exercise. It's going to look at healthy nutritional habits, self-care, sense of vitality and energy, really looking at minimizing alcohol, drugs, tobacco, and also connection with nature. These different components here are actually part of lifestyle medicine, can really help to reduce stress when it comes to regular exercise and healthy nutrition habits. The other support in dimensions of wellness are social, so really looking at positive connections, encouraging community, giving and receiving social support, vulnerability, compassion, love, integrity. So as I read these, kind of do a little checklist of what you're doing currently that is already checking those boxes. Because we're really going to be working on self-efficacy and really focusing on the positive and the strengths that we currently have. Intellectually, creativity, stimulating mental activities, learning, reading, problem solving, current with events. Harvey Mudd is a very intellectual space, so this is probably a space that's getting quite the stimulation. And then resources, really looking at where do we have the resources to support the dimensions of wellness. So there's parent relations, there's connecting to community, there's even applications on our smartphones of mindfulness and breath work and wellness coaching. And then there's even live webinars such as this for active wellness coaching. So here we are, we're going up the top of Mount Baldy here, and we're on our way to supporting you and your students with a positive ORS approach and understanding the dimensions of wellness. So the reason why I lead with this picture is because every cobblestone is really a small step in the success. And we may stumble a little bit, but that only helps us to learn and to grow. And with a growth mindset, it really will give us a stronger sense of success as we move forward up on top mountain. So what is the ORS approach? You've heard me say it several times now. ORS actually stands for open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries. So it's really important when we're doing this wellness coaching, when we're doing this active listening, to really be present, to build a rapport where it's a very safe environment. So when we have a safe environment, the effective outcome is that the people that we're talking with are going to want to tell their stories. So our children are going to want to actually open up, be more creative in the process. So open-ended questions really come down to being more descriptive. They're not a yes or no answer. So what does social wellness look like to you? Paint a picture of your ideal day at HMC. Paint a picture of your ideal class at HMC. Those types of questions that will help to kind of create dialogue with your children and help them to really self-discover some of the things that you may be wanting them to improve upon within their wellness dimensions. And then affirmations. Respond with positive commentary on what they're sharing. That really is going to help with the self-efficacy. So if someone said, yeah, I was on Zoom and I, asked a question and I was able to get that answer, it sounds like, the chat box was really effective for you, which builds their self-efficacy. Reflections, really confirming responses, emotions. So if they were to say, I feel like I need to make more friends, there's not as many people that I get to chat with on Zoom because no one has their Zoom cameras on. Can be more, it sounds like you'd like to get to know more people, and let's describe, or let's figure out the best way that we can do that. And then lastly is a summary, is to gather the positive feedback and figure out exactly what they're saying and basically reflect it back to them so that they know that you're hearing them. This may sound something that's very simple in approach, but it's amazingly effective. So we're going to do this interactive process here with you. And so I really do need your involvement in this to really make it an interactive process. So what is your biggest win of your HMC experience and how can you build on that? So this question is actually a question that you could ask your child. What is your biggest HMC experience? What is your biggest win? And then how can you build on that? And what would be your answer? What would you say to this answer? What is your biggest challenge of your HMC experience? This is going to give you the ability to really open up, listen to your child, hear what they have to say, and then from that, ask them to support through resources. And what does that look like to them? What are some of the ways that they can manage through that challenge? What are some of the ways that they've possibly experienced something in the past that they overcame? These are the type of questions that we're going to be asking our children to be able to really help them to self-discover and to really come up with those answers. So part of this opportunity here is we're going to have questions and answers at the end of this program. So I want you to start to formulate an open-ended question for your HMC student. This could be something that you'd like me to answer a little bit later in the process here. Some of the tools that we want to use is terminology like paint a picture. So paint a picture of what it would look like with all your friends around you, or paint a picture of what it would look like to feel stress-free at the end of the day. Describe what success looks like to you in terms of the different dimensions of wellness. You can pick which program you want to choose. What is your biggest win? What is your biggest challenge? And what strengths do you have to support you? So I don't see much in the chat box right now, but I'm hoping that there'll be some things that will come into that, as well as the Q&A. And then it's really important to lead with curiosity. So as parents, we have a lot of experiences, and as you probably have been very well accomplished, you have a lot of expertise. Well, part of wellness coaching is really being a non-judgmental partner in collaborating and not actually taking the expert role. So we have a program called RULE, which number one is R, which is resist telling them what to do. Help them discover their own solutions. The U is for understanding their motivation. What's their why? Why are they wanting to do this? And then listen with empathy. Many times it may be challenging to kind of hold back on something because you have something to add to it, but really listen with empathy and just be present for them without the response. And then lastly is empower them with achievable goals and techniques to overcome barriers. Part of that is hopefully you're going to find some tools for this process, but when I say achievable, meaning something that's going to be really tangible and easy to process in a short amount of time. And we're going to talk about SMART goals next. Following up with SMART goals. SMART goals are those achievable goals. So they're specific in time. There's a measurable amount. They're attainable. So if we were to say something like, I want to meet 1 new friend versus 10 new friends, you know, meeting 1 new friend would be much more attainable than 10. And of course, also more realistic, and then putting it into a timely space. So I want to meet 1 new friend within a 4-week time period. So what does your ideal experience look like for your students? So paint a picture of your student's ideal HMC experience. When you do that, what does it look like? I want you to really dream big so that you have the ability to kind of get that macro space, and then we're going to dial it in and have smaller steps so that you can get there in a small step process, because all those small steps actually create that bigger dream. All right, now I'm changing gears. We're going to talk about the science of mindfulness and the options. So mindfulness is really a way for us to really connect from the self-care and the well-being and create a positive change in a present moment. So being mindful actually reduces stress, it controls anxiety, it promotes emotional health, it enhances self-awareness, it lengthens actual attention span, even though, you know, we sometimes want to like be on a computer for 10 hours, but if we actually took breaks every hour, we're going to actually have a better attention span. As we get older, it can actually reduce age-related memory loss. It can generate kindness, as we use gratitude as being more of a space of meditation. And then it also can improve sleep. There's breath work that we can do to actually help to increase and induce sleep and a deeper sleep, and also decrease blood pressure. So those are some of the benefits that come from mindfulness. And some of the ways that we can actually do mindfulness are quite expansive. So we're going to be focusing more on breath work, but some of the others are guided imagery, where you can actually take a picture of a place that you've been before, or a beautiful vacation spot that you have a peaceful feeling about, and just close your eyes and get a feel for the way that it looks, the colors, the smell of the trees, maybe the sound of the wind blowing through the trees. And that will actually help to stimulate the mind in a way to calm it down and create that mindfulness. Body scanning is really more of like that ability to kind of relax the body from head to toe, going from one body part to the next. Seated meditation is probably something that most of you are familiar with as being the most kind of stationary type, where you're just closing your eyes and being in more of a quiet space. That's usually the most challenging one to do. So that would be probably more of the higher level. Mindful eating is just actually being familiar with like the taste of the food and looking at the colors, and having this slowing down process is really what mindfulness is. There's mindful listening, which wellness coaching has a lot to do with that, because we are an active listener. Movement meditation. Sometimes people say, I can't sit still, I can't meditate. Well, you can meditate while you walk, you can meditate while you hike. Gratitude practice, that is as simple as thinking of 3 things that went well for the day. Science shows that when you really do that type of gratitude practice, it brings endorphins into the body and really calms the mind down of maybe some of the other things that aren't quite in alignment at that moment. And then nature meditation, going out into nature, is really a way to calm the nervous system down. So we're going to do a little bit of breath work here. And first I want to just kind of go through the science of breath work so you kind of know a little bit about it. The diaphragmatic breathing, otherwise known as belly breathing, is a stress management strategy. It actually focuses on the active movement of the breath and the expansion of the diaphragm and the abdomen. So the benefits of diaphragmatic breathing, it actually contributes to decreased oxygen consumption, decreased heart rate, and decreased blood pressure. It creates more oxygen into the brain. And the parasympathetic system, the rest and digest component, actually activates with breath work. It creates this space between the ears and the shoulders. So we have the ability to assist the body in recovery and cell repair. Also, it benefits in reducing anxiety. And as I mentioned before, aids in sleep, and then digestion and mental clarity. So I want everyone to be active here. This is a basic exercise. I want you to sit at the edge of your chair with your feet firmly on the floor. Feet are right in line with your knees, kind of have a 90-degree angle from your feet to your knees to your hips. So that's a 90-degree angle. And you're going to place your hands on your belly and you're going to inhale either through your nose or your mouth. You can either keep your eyes open or closed. Either one is fine. And as you inhale, you want to expand through that belly, really open up the hands. We're going to inhale for 6. So inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And as you do, I want you to kind of arch the back and let the belly drop forward. Okay, you might want to widen those feet so they're right at hip width apart. And then you're going to exhale, you're going to squeeze, you're going to draw the navel to the spine. You're going to get like a little arch in your back so that your shoulders are kind of coming forward but still away from your ears. And your pelvic floor is going to tilt forwards. It's going to have to push the air out through the mouth. So let's try that again. Inhale, expand. And exhale, squeeze. Once again, inhale, expand, big belly breath. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and exhale, squeeze. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One more. Inhale, expand. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and exhale, squeeze. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you can start with the count of 6. You can count, start at 4 if you need to. I did do 8. That's a little bit more advanced, but really just start to listen to the body, really expand through the belly, and then exhale, squeeze, and push all that air out. All right, so here is our formula for supporting your HMC student. I want you to paint a picture of the vision of your ideal day, not only for yourself, but what you think that ideal day looks like for your child. And then ask that same question to them and see how it differs and what it compare and contrast in that. And then the vision, the goals, what does that look like to you? So not only to you, but to your student, ask that same thing. You're going to start to get that curiosity and start to get a little bit more information from them. And then action plan. What does that feel like? Describe the path to get there. So we're going to use the SMART goals. We're going to be specific with the amount of time, what it looks like, how many days a week, being able to measure it, making sure that it's attainable, realistic in the goal, and then timely as far as like it's going to help to create the result that we want in a short term. And then incorporating different tools that we have, whether it be breath work, other sources of mindfulness, other wellness lifestyle medicine techniques, whether it be exercise, 150 minutes per week. That's only 30 minutes for 5 times a week, or really working on a plant-based diet, or trying to incorporate sleep 7 to 9 hours per day. And then accountability. How are you going to support yourself to make these choices in your life and to help to support these choices for your children and their growth and success? So here's some of the references. You will be getting all of these. There's a lot of science that goes with this. So this is just a short little nugget of information that we have today, but there's a lot of support. And then lastly is really to thank you so much for your time and energy and really your attention today, and want to really just ask you how you can incorporate wellness coaching into your relationships and how I can support you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Susan.
You're welcome.
Wonderful. I would love to invite people to put some questions in the Q&A that you'd like to ask Susan. Um, while you're typing those in, we did get a few pre-submitted questions with registration. So if you don't mind, Susan, while we're waiting for the first question to post, maybe I'll start with this one. There were a frequent challenge that parents observed from sort of their front seat to distance learning is the challenge of getting students to connect with others or meet fellow students, and especially with first-year students. Parents don't want to be too involved, but see their students try to engage with others in Zoom and online calls is not easy, and it's not clear how much guidance they should be giving in that area. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it kind of goes back with that curiosity question, to see, where their students are with that. Like, what have been some of your successes as far as like meeting friends? Ask them those questions and see what they say. They may actually have more friends than you even know about. Now, if they're actually stating a concern that they haven't been able to meet people, to once again be inquisitive about it. Well, what are some of the other ways that you've met people before online, and what's been successful in that way? I think a lot of times, we kind of are in a new situation, but we have a lot of experiences that we can tap into from the past. So those would be the curious, open-ended questions that I would ask them, and then even ask who are some of the friends that you've made? Like maybe they have some great friends that you don't even know about. So it's really about asking the questions. And in that process, I think if you're doing it from an inquisitive mind versus, and from more of a positive space, you're probably going to get a better received answer.
Very helpful. Thank you. Let's see. Do I see any Q&A? I do not. So I have a few others here that we received earlier. I'm struggling with how to support my college student, how much to push, when to motivate, and when to step back.
Yeah, well, first off, let's, and I know that you've already thought of this, but I'm just going to kind of state the obvious. You are the first to have ever experienced this type of process of actually having your child be either at home or in this environment with the pandemic. So as a parent of two graduates, I honestly didn't have a good pulse on what they were doing. So you actually having a bird's eye view or a very beeline view is quite different than most of us from the past. But what I would recommend is, once again, lead with that curiosity and ask, is there anything that I can do to support you in this process? And another question would be, what are some ideas that you have to support yourself in in this journey? And I think those are some of the questions that are helpful. And I know that we're all like looking for answers, but sometimes the questions actually lead to the answers.
I think you just perfectly addressed a question that came in, how to check in about mental health in an organic way without applying pressure. I think you
thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for that question. Mental health is of the utmost important. It actually ties in with everything. In my master's program of integrative wellness and really looking at lifestyle medicine, everything kind of weaves in together. So you can kind of, if your student or your child is at home and you see that they're kind of in the thick of being on the computer all the time, their eating habits are not at optimal, they're not eating that well. You don't see them going out into the sunlight. You don't see them actually exercising. You don't see them talking with friends, which was the social. Those are some indicators that there needs to be some changes. So having some ways to create a a little break for them and say, you know, how does it sound for you to have a 5-minute break to just go for a walk with me? Or I made some chicken soup. I'd love for you, you know, to have some. It's a cold night. Those kind of supportive things can actually help. But in regards to like checking in on mental health, I think that, you know, the stigma of mental health is because people are avoiding the question. And I think it's just an important way to be just like, you know, in our family, mental health is super important. And I want you to know that this is an open, you know, communication line for you, and that your health is of the utmost importance. So if there's any way that I can support you, if there's anything that you need, I'm here for you. And I think that type of openness is really beneficial for people to really feel safe and talk about what's going on.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. All right, let's see. It looks like you got a thank you. And then here's another question. Any tips on how to check in with them when they are not at home and in the dorms, when your student is not a big communicator?
Yes, I've had a lot of practice of this. I usually have to drive with like food or something that would give a response. The I love yous didn't always work either. So I totally feel you here, and you can tell that you've got to use a little bit of sense of humor. You've got to have that, you know, sense of positivity, because that's going to help you as a parent kind of get through this. So some of the tips would be to have some of those open-ended questions like, hey, you know, out of curiosity, what was your biggest win for the day? Or, you know, if there's something that you know that they like as far as like sports or a certain team or some type of music or something that you can engage them just to get a response, something that's not physically like checking in on them about their homework or that, but just something that's going to be somewhat of a human interest to them. I think you're going to get a response. One hack that I've done before is just a cute picture or something that I find, or my son was just talking about the muffins that I used to make, and you know, took a picture of that, and I got a response from him. So you got to be a little creative when it comes to just getting some type of interaction with them. And then once they do that, you can maybe lead with another question of something that you might want to know about.
Excellent. Let's see. It looks like we have another question in the Q&A. It would be great and fun to see some sort of fitness group challenges offered for students, kind of like a Fitbit challenge, but an HMC challenge, something that would inspire them to complete or participate actively. Maybe some sort of circus, run, steps, etc. Anything that gets them away from the screen.
Yeah, you know, there are some different options that are out there, you know, with the different smart devices. And I know in the past, HMC has done like the HVZ and some of the other things that are out there. So I'm more than happy to help to collaborate to create some type of idea. And what I found most successful is when it's student run, even though I know that they're very, you know, they're very involved in their academics. But if there's something that had somewhat of a structure and then they were able to provide feedback, I think that would be a great way for them to actually engage. You know, the Apple Watch and some of the different apps that are out there, they're very easy to like plug and play to do something like that. And I think it would be supportive for them for sure. And Nicole, I want to get back just a little bit to that other question about the student and not being a big communicator. Sometimes giving the child the space, but also communicating in a way that you'd like to be communicated is also optimal in getting them to communicate.
Excellent. Great. Let's see, a few more questions. This is pretty specific. If the student is not at home, how do you make sure that they wake up to attend Zoom class in the morning? And then maybe follow up, how often do you check in with your student when your student is not at home? Each week, every 2 weeks? What are some, how do you sort of let go and support your student when they're not physically in your home?
Yeah, well, once again, this it is a challenging time as being a first time, first year student. So these are things that they're going to learn on their own. And like I showed you that picture of the mountain with the cobblestones, sometimes they're going to stumble a little bit before they kind of get back on track. And that's part of their growth. That's what they do. But if they're looking for help, if they want help with some tools on waking up, I would first lead with like curiosity to be like, do you find that, it's easy for you to wake up for your Zoom calls or your Zoom lectures? What are some strategies you found to be helpful for that? And it may lead to a conversation about sleep. It may lead to some other conversations, but I think it's more about asking the questions, and then you can develop the habits from there. And then from habits, like you want to connect a habit to something that's already pre-existing. So, if they're not early risers, it's going to be very challenging for them to wake up. They're going to have to change their whole habit. So, it's one of those things that they're going to have to kind of stumble a little bit. But hopefully you can be supportive in helping them to come up with some different tools, whether it be for sleep or alarm systems, or having the ability to, watch the Zoom lecture after recording and work and collaborate with people. And then as far as checking in, when your student isn't home every week or every 2 weeks, once again, that's going to be really part of a customized space, because as a parent, we're really working at giving them the space to make decisions on their own, but also giving them the support to know that we're there for them. So that comes with that supportive space. So you can ask them, you say, I'd love to be able to communicate with you. What would work with your schedule? Would you like me to, check in with you once a week, every 2 weeks? What would be optimal for you? So if you actually put the question to them and they answer it, then that may give you a little bit more feedback. The same with the actual Zoom classes in the morning. Say, is there any assistance that you need with that, to wake up in the morning, or how are you finding your success in waking up? Just being more curious. Once again, the OARS method is, those open-ended questions are really going to help to create that dialogue.
That's great. I have another question that was pre-submitted that I think might be helpful for families who have students at home with them, rather than living in a pod or away from home right now. Can you suggest some techniques for group or family discussions around the stress and anxiety levels that students are feeling during COVID and around the election? How should individuals share their feelings, and how can family members help?
Yeah, I think that is a really important question. And it goes back to, and I feel like, somewhat repeating myself, but it's such an important part, is to create the environment that's non-judgmental, collaborative, supportive partnership. So really being there to be like, this is a safe space for you to talk about whatever you're feeling, any emotions that you have. There's, a lot of stress in regards to the environment with the election, with COVID. Things are different than normal. And we do have means to kind of help ourselves. If we look at lifestyle medicine, if we look at nutrition, we look at exercise, we look at meditation, we look at sleep. These are some of the supportive ways that we can work together. Are you open to learning some different methods to have stress resilience? Are you, how are you feeling? How is your stress? Are there certain times that you find that you're happier than others? You know, what are your tools and your resources that you use to help to reduce your stress? So there's a lot of different questions depending on your child and how, you know, you communicate with them. You're going to have to be a little bit, you know, creative when it comes to me and wellness coaching. I ask many different questions to stimulate, you know, a response for the same topic.
Excellent. All right. Are there any other questions from the parent participants? If you have them, feel free to put them in the Q&A. And Susan, I just have a question for you as a MUD parent yourself. If you could talk a little bit about maybe your, and granted times were different, it wasn't during a pandemic when your son started his first year, but maybe some concerns you had and what were his wins and challenges. And, you know, now that he's working and moved on, can you speak to all of that in hindsight a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we're all going through a very, you know, growth mindset time when it comes to our children going away to college. And having my son at Harvey Mudd, it was an extremely intense time. And like one of the parents here that said that when he wasn't a big communicator, even though he was only 45 minutes away from home, he didn't come home. He didn't, I didn't see him. I hardly talked to him. And it wasn't because we didn't have a good relationship. It was just, he was extremely busy. He was very active in his, you know, in his classes, and it was an intense time. And I recall back of like what it looked like when I was in college, and I didn't talk to my parents much either. And I was involved in my activities and my academics. So I had to first kind of reflect back of like where I was to understand that this is what it means to start to, you know, have your independence. But I was supportive. I did do those, you know, those things of texting or calling and, you know, trying to connect, or to, you know, I was fortunate enough to be close enough that I could drive to say I'd love to take him out for Sunday brunch or have that type of connection. But the biggest thing for me was just to really let him know that I was there for him, and that if he needed me for anything, that I would be, you know, able to help or support him in that way. But yeah, I feel for all of you in regards to, you know, this current situation. There are no, you know, rule books for this, so we are, you know, needing to be more creative. But he, you know, developed a lot of stress resilience, and he is thriving thriving now out of school. But, you know, truth be told, very transparent, you know, it was a bumpy road, but you know, those bumps really did make him stronger.
Excellent. Great. All right. Let's see. Here's another question for you. How can a parent of a fully grown adult become or remain a positive force in their life through times when they feel worried and critical of their students' choices?
So how can a parent feel positive when they're feeling that their child,
their adult child
is not making good choices?
Correct. And they're worried about them.
Yeah. That is a challenging space to be in. I guess the challenge would be, is there one or three things that they're doing right? Because typically what happens is we focus on the things that they're not doing right versus the things that they are doing right. And that goes with like the perfectionist type of situation. So that would be first and foremost. But if there really is something that is of concern, you know, mental health, you know, lifestyle choices that are definitely detrimental for them physically or mentally, then need to draw in the support, the resources from other people. So whether it be the school or friends, or what I found worked with some of my friends was to have another parent actually speak with the child, which I've done for other parents that needed my support, just because I had a different means of communication. So, and if you have a 2-parent or 2-guardian family, sometimes that helps, or an aunt or an uncle, or someone else that may just have a different communication style. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. So, so from the positive perspective, it is challenging, but if you can find somebody else to help you with that, that may be a solution. And in that, having that resource, that's the positive space that I would look at.
Excellent. That's great. Very good. Maybe can you speak a little bit about encouraging parents encouraging and helping their students build relationships with their professors? You probably saw it personally as a parent, the growth and the benefit to that, but without telling students what to do, how can parents encourage them to go that route, especially during this time when it's virtual learning?
Yeah, so that would be a question that would go to successes of the past. Obviously, I think something that probably everyone is familiar with, but it's important to mention is, the high schools that most of your children were at, they were probably, number one in their school. So maybe they didn't have to, work as hard or find as many resources, but to maybe curiosity question be like, in your high school times, were there any, challenging courses that you had, and what did you need to do to succeed in those classes? And then, out of curiosity, do you find that it's helpful to build relationships with your professors or with other students when you're at Harvey Mudd? Some of these questions may sound, and I know I'm prefacing this because I know that I've asked myself the same thing, is they sound like the obvious questions, or it may sound like I don't know what I'm talking about type of thing, like, oh, have you thought of this before? But what happens is your child or another person that you're working with would be like, oh, no, I haven't actually thought of it. Or they'll be like, yeah, mom, yeah, I did that. I reached out to the professor. And then you could say like, oh, would that be something that you would want to do with this other class that you're in? Do you think that might be helpful? So it's these curiosity questions that sometimes seem so obvious that just kind of help to get the wheels rolling and the brainstorming going. Or another process is, are you open to a brainstorming session, how you might be able to be more successful in the class? Or, maybe I'm overstepping, do you feel successful in this class that you're in? And they could either say no, or yeah, I actually do. And be like, oh, okay, I thought that you were needing some help. So I think some of those types of questions are really part of the process. It's really a big communication.
Excellent. Great. All right. Well, I think we probably have time for 1 or 2 more questions. So if you have something burning on your mind, please enter it in the Q&A and I'll get to that. I'd also like to ask this one, Susan. How do I get my son to focus on the positives and not dwell so much on the negatives while still being supportive of his frustrations with Zoom University?
Yeah, that's a good one. I've had wellness coaching clients that have had a lot of negative self-talk, and I've told them that they're very successful at it because they just keep on that track. So I challenge them to reframe and say, I want to give you a challenge. Let's see if you can reframe 3 situations that you normally look at negative, and what is there a positive of it? And can you, and let's go through that exercise. Because part of this positive psychology is retraining the brain. So, or keeping it simple, like what's one positive thing that happened to you today? And then to really build on that from a self-efficacy perspective, and how did that feel? And, what are some other ways that you think that you could build that positivity into your space? So that's some of the tools that I would recommend. And then I did notice, Nicole, that you kind of glazed over this, but what are some of the tools, understanding mental and physical well-being for students in a COVID environment? I know I mentioned a little bit, but just to kind of hone in on lifestyle medicine, it is really important, just on the fundamentals, to make sure that your children are, and I say make sure, but to give them supportive space to have 150 exercise minutes per week. That can be broken up in 20 minutes or 30 minutes at a time. It doesn't have to be, an hour at a time. Nutrition from a plant-based perspective, really eating a lot of healthy leafy greens and fruits and vegetables, that type of thing. Sleep 7 to 9 hours, maintaining some social engagement, whether it be, sounds funny, but online games, it is a very social space. As much as we as parents may not understand it, it is a big social community for our children. And it does give them that. Intellectually, I think that they're really, getting quite a bit of stimulation. So giving them some time outdoors in nature, or even just finding some relaxing music. Some of those types of things will help with both mental and physical conditioning.
That's wonderful. I was going to ask you for some final thoughts or words of advice, but everything you just said really captured it so nicely. That's wonderful.
I think if I were to say one thing to kind of close it up is that, just to be there for your children, and in that non-judgmental collaborative partnership, and to understand that there's lots of resources out there, and that there is no such thing as failure. We're learning and growing with every situation that we're in, and to really take that lesson and to find something that's really creating more strength and power for a stronger success for the future.
Thank you so much. Well, I want to thank Susan today for sharing your time and your knowledge and your insights with us. And I'd like to thank our parent participants for your questions and for joining us tonight. We hope other parent programs like this will follow. Please look for this material next week. We'll be sending the recorded video and the presentation slides if you like. And also future events can be found on the upcoming events page at hmc.edu/parents. We welcome any suggestions you might have for future events, or if you're interested in hosting an event like this, please email us at parents@hmc.edu. So thanks again for joining us, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.